Well, that works. Consider me surprised that it actually works. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, so I've been banging my head against some of the database migration stuff for the single code base project. And there's a couple of issues there. So the general idea is that we would backport all the schema changes from EE to CE, and then eventually make sure that they both have the same schema file. That in itself is not too much of a problem. I have a migration which I would say is probably about 70% done at this point, which does exactly that. The issue becomes that we also want to move EE migrations to CE, which means we have to find a way to prevent them from running because they will be doing work that this backport migration does. Initially, I tried to just copy those migrations and run them, but that's not going to work. Some of them depend on columns that are not present in CE, but the migrations for those no longer exist in EE. These are migrations for like 2014, so they depend on something for like, I don't know, let's say 2012. There might be migrations that depend on EE-specific code that may or may not yet be available when we merge this, or perhaps no longer is available. They do data migrations that are redundant in C because they're trying to migrate data that isn't there because the table isn't there. That's not a big deal because that will be a no-op, but it's
a no-op, right? Yeah.
Sorry?
Essentially, all these migrations need to be a no-op, right?
Oh, let me turn my phone off. Say again, my washing machine is droning out all the...
No, it's not you, Yorick. I think it's Robert. Your mic is connecting very late in your sentence.
No. Anyway, I'll continue in the meantime. In other words, there are a few different kind of migrations, and there's 330 of them. And basically, the sort of overarching story is that that's too much to verify. Can we actually run those safely? You know, will they fail or not? I would expect that a bunch of them are going to fail because code no longer exists that they depend on, or you know, tables aren't there, columns aren't there, etc. So the idea I originally had in mind was we create this backport merge request, and then we port these migrations to CE and somehow disable them if this, somehow disable them. The problems there is that essentially what we want to do is for existing EE installations, nothing happens because the changes are there. For EE installations on a previous version, we want to make sure that any data migrations, whatever, are still run because we're only backporting schema changes. So in other words, if there's say data with LDAP and in E we change some format, and you upgrade from 11.9 to 11.10, and if 11.10 includes all these changes, we want those migrations to actually run. And then the trouble is that in CE, we don't want any of these migrations to run, and we do want the backport migration to run. And this is difficult because we have no way of detecting, are you an existing E installation going to this version? Are you a CE installation? And if the trouble in a development environment, you are basically an E instance. So we do want to run some of the new migration, etc. In other words, it's basically different environments, and we can only distinguish between are you CE or E, which is not enough information to determine can we run these migrations. We also can't remove them because that means if we do that and say 11.10, you'd have to upgrade to 11.9 first and then 11.10. And we normally only do that with major releases. So that means we would have to delay it until 12.0. Because then we can say, oh, in 12.0, we'll just remove all the E migrations. We add the backport in CE, and we're done, basically. Because you have to upgrade to 11.10, I guess, first.
Yorick,
yeah.
But this is 3 weeks away.
12.0?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought 11.10 was the next one. Where am I? Like 1 month. Oh,
You're
11.10 is
lagging
this
1
week.
month.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, 11.11 development month just started. So
Right,
we have 3 weeks. to
Okay,
get-
so I somehow had the idea about mine that 11.12 was going to be I don't know if you remember June. I don't remember my month. So I think, that might be a bit too late if we're targeting May 22nd. But
May
if,
22nd is 12.0.
right.
No, 11. No,
11.11.
you're April now. 11.11 is 22nd of April. No,
Let me check the release managers page. Oh, yeah,
you're
11.10
April
is
now.
April.
I
Yeah,
think it's on the release manager's page.
So 11.11, so May will be 11.11? Or
11.11 is May.
okay, so June is 12.0.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we should be good enough, Yorick. Do not forget we have like a fat week of traveling.
Sure. My main concern there is like, hey, if because of that deadline, I felt that I was a bit uncertain about saying, hey, we can do all of that, except this one thing that will be a month later. Now, from setting aside those deadlines for a moment, as far as I can tell, that is the easiest solution. Because the alternative is that we modify 330 migrations, where we basically say, so what we'd have to do, the idea of this backport migration, we set the timestamp to something like 2010. And then for these 330 migrations, we check, has that one migration run? If so, don't do anything. The problem is that I found then is that I suspect this will start causing trouble when you upgrade from older instances, because it kind of depends on where you upgrade from. Like if you upgrade from a very ancient, am I saying this correctly? There might not actually be problems now that I think of it, but it's like one of those cases where like, I'm not really sure how that's going to go. It could work or it could cause problems.
But what exact case are you trying to cover?
Right. So the idea here would be we take this backport migration that I've been working on. Right now the timestamp's 2019, blah, blah, blah. The idea is if we put that very far in the past, it will run first. So what we could do is it will create everything necessary, and then we can modify these EE migrations to say, hey, if that migration is already ran, don't do anything. That way,
Rails provide any kind of introspection on.
I
don't know like how supportive Rails is of like looking in the schema versions table.
They have a class for it. I think we've abused it in a few places already to. We do this sort of similar with some specs where they test certain columns. So we say, oh, hey, if the version is greater or lower, then don't do this, something like that. Because otherwise they fail. The issue there, though, is that you'd have to do that 330 times for the up approach, and then probably also for the down approach. Although I'm not sure because my backport migration doesn't actually revert anything. Like I deliberately didn't include reverting because if I were to say backport an LDAP table from E to CE, and then in this migration, when it gets reverted, remove that, a past E migration would fail if you try to revert that, because that one might try to remove this table. So basically at a sort of a point where, at least in CE, reverting this means you have to revert whatever initial migration introduced it, because either one of the two will break otherwise. So with all of that in mind, I've been thinking more and more like, okay, maybe 12.0 is a point where you say, hey, that's where we do it. Because that's sort of a, let's say, a milestone where you can say, hey, once you're at 12.0, you can't go back. Which I think is a bit more reasonable to saying, oh, hey, if you're at 11.10 and it's broken, sorry. Like, you can't go back to 11.9.
But that is possibly a bit of a problem.
Right.
If we say that, that means all the changes in a major release, if anything goes wrong.
We don't officially say that. I think it would be more reasonable to this one time say, hey, because we are doing this, if you upgrade to 12.0, I mean, technically, you can actually revert to the previous versions, just that these EE tables and columns will continue to exist. But that's fine because CE ignores them. And when you rerun the migration, it will skip whatever's already done. It's just basically a point in time we have to say, like, keep in mind, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I would just like...
fine. As long as we have a clear messaging there,
right,
and explanation, like if something does go wrong, these are the steps you need to take, and these are
right,
the things you need to ignore or do.
right. Yeah, and so, long story short, I basically want to have some, ideas on this, what will be best, blah, blah, blah. One thing though is if we target 12.0, then this merge request would have to basically stay open until the 12.0 development cycle, which is not a bad, like a problem, because I probably have to test this on staging anyway, and I'll probably run into bugs and blah, blah, blah. So even though I hope to be finishing the coding part this week, probably it'll take me like, I don't know, week, 2 weeks maybe, making sure it doesn't blow up GitLab.com.
So just looking at the current stats for the single code base project, we have a lot of items moved from 11.10 to 11.11, which was kind of expected. We have around, what is this, 64, this is 84 issues assigned to 11.11.
Right.
For 12.0, we only have 6, which means I can expect those 80-something issues to be halved, and then the other half to be moved for 12.0. So I don't think it's unexpected to say that 12.0 should be our target.
Right.
And I think you are safe to try it that way. If this is indeed the most efficient solution, I'm all up for it. Like, and if we say like we had to do it in 12.0, like it couldn't have been better timing actually.
Right. Yeah, and so let me just quickly scribble that down. Plan.
But Jorik, can I repeat this just to see whether I understand correctly? Mm-hmm. So the reason why we are talking about 11.11 and 12.0 is because the easiest solution for us would be to force people to upgrade to 11.11 first. This is the hard stop they have, like they need to jump to that. They cannot jump over 11.11. Mm-hmm. And in 11.11, you would include what exactly? You would include this migration?
No, so if we target 12.0, then all of this goes in 12.0. Nothing will be in 11, whatever. The idea, sort of the plan will be we merge this in 12.0, and as part of 12.0, we then remove, I would say, all migrations introduced prior to 11.11. This way you can upgrade from 11.11 to 12.0, but from 11.10 you first have to go to 11.11. We could keep a few more migrations, but basically the idea behind the removal of those EE migrations is that there's few migrations I have to go in and figure out, okay, how can we make these basically no ops if the stuff is already there. So I think for more recent migrations that might not be necessary. Wait, am I saying that correctly? No, it is necessary for CE, because they might be migrating columns that are not there. So there's 2 ideas. We put this in 12.0. We remove all EE-specific migrations except those from the last release. Those 10, 15 migrations, if any, we make sure that they can operate if whatever they're trying to migrate is not there. Because for CE, that won't be there yet. And then towards the end, we have this big backport migration that on EE is a no-op, and on CE will add all the missing stuff. Sort of option 2 is we keep more than one release worth of migrations. I don't think it has any practical benefits for users, because they still have to upgrade to 11.11 first, as per our sort of upgrading policies. And it means more work for us, because it means there's more migrations to go through. And workflow-wise, probably what we'd have to do is merge this after the feature freeze of 12.0, and then say, hey, after the 7th, there cannot be any E migrations anymore, because they will be removed. Because otherwise what happens is we do that, and on like the 9th, I say, hey, we're ready. It's like, oh crap, there's 5 new migrations. I fix those, and it's like 3 new migrations. I keep doing that a bunch of times. That way we don't have to port these 330, 340 maybe at that time migrations to CE. We don't have to worry about making sure they actually work, compatible, blah, blah, blah. And CE instances will still have the exact same schema. I did take a quick look also to see if there's maybe any data migrations that migrate data in CE for like data to use. I couldn't find any. They all operate on E-specific data or E-specific tables.
I was going to ask, is it pretty much just, I would think it's just adding a bunch of columns.
Yeah, it's mostly like LDAP stuff, the Jenkins EE service and that sort of thing. But I definitely have to test this on, I guess probably do this on like a copy of dev or something like that. And see how that works. But I think that this particular approach is probably the least painful, because all the other ones that I can think of, they all have these sort of edge cases that could appear like, oh, it could work, but we could also run into this, that, or worse, we might not even know what to run into. And I really don't look like those kind of proposals. It's like, yeah, it might work, but we're not sure.
So you were mentioning option 2 would be to keep 1 version worth of migration.
Yeah.
But you also then said that this is of questionable value. So
yeah,
why would we even consider that? Why is that even an option 2?
I could see people making a point like, oh, that's too much, right? That in itself might not be the argument how they phrase it, but that's essentially what it comes down to. Like, people feel uneasy maybe removing that many migrations. I believe the last discussion regarding this that was planned for 12.0 was to delete migrations older than a year, I believe. But since we don't allow you to upgrade more than 1 minor version at a time, at least online, offline, I think we do. But it's probably... Well, so it's written in a way, if I remember correctly, we say, hey, if you use online upgrades, you have to do 1 minor at a time.
Oh, no. I'm telling you about I'm thinking about the package. In package, we have a hard stop.
Right.
Like, it does not allow you to upgrade. Right?
Oh,
like,
okay.
It tells you you need to. For source installation and other installation methods that we are not supporting, it's a fair game.
Right.
But for Omnibus, we have a very much a hard stop. It tells you oh, we detected that you were on this version and the next major version is around the corner. You need to jump to this one. Does keeping the older migration, the older migrations, yes, for at least 1 version, give us any better situation for rolling back, or no?
Well, so if you do a code rollback, those migrations will be present again, right? Because you move back to the old code. The difficulties, you can't do a database rollback then without also a code rollback, but that has always been a bit of a gray area.
So I can imagine a situation, and we had situations in the past like that, where people would jump to 12. Sorry, not 12, but major version, right? Performance regressions,
right?
God knows what else, right? Like some breakages, things like that happen.
Yeah.
And as a first thing that they do to restore service is just roll back to the previous version, both code and database.
Right.
And they have a known working situation. So if keeping 1 month or 1 version worth of migrations would allow us to more easily do that,
right,
I think we should consider it. I'm not saying do it, I'm saying we should consider it.
Right, so in a revert approach, I don't think it would actually make a difference.
Because let's say you run Omnibus and you upgrade from 11.11 to 12.0, and you find out, hey, we want to go back. What you would do is you would install the old package, which has all of these old migrations still there. And this backport migration, you don't need to revert it, because whatever it adds is just ignored by the previous version. And you would have to revert code-wise anyway, because you would go from this, single code-base version to whatever it was before. In other words, the backport stuff can be reverted, no problem. You can run it like a million times, and it will just skip whatever is done. And because the previous version release still has these old migrations, you still have those. So I think the reverting process is not affected in like any negative way. The only thing you can't do is keep the code as it is, revert back a specific EE migration, because that one won't exist anymore. So you have to go back to the previous code version.
I think that's probably a bit too sophisticated for
Right.
a lot of our users, not because they can't do it, but mostly because it's finicky, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I don't think we ourselves are doing it. So
No. Most time we revert is install previous version and then whatever.
that's in line with what we recommend
Right.
to customers to do. Okay, that sounds good. So, Yurik, one really important thing, and you should add this to the weight of this problem.
Right.
I think it's crucial to create a proper test plan for this.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I would really, really like if you could include someone from quality to be there as a, I don't know, help, or someone with a bit more experience to drive this type of checks.
Mm-hmm. No, totally, because this is the variation so far is pretty big. For the most part, it's just adding columns without default, so it, at least on Postgres, is fairly painless. But there are a couple of tables where it adds them with default values. Fortunately, in all cases, make sure like, hey, if this column already exists, don't do it. So for GitLab.com, it shouldn't have any impact. But I can definitely see this being a bit of a big migration for existing CE installations. Dev, or at least a clone of it, somehow will probably be a good candidate for this, because it has some data, and I don't have to like generate fake data.
Yeah, the thing we won't be able to like reliably test there is adding stuff to like the users table.
Right.
It's just so small.
Yeah, and I think fortunately most of the changes are like the smaller tables. There are a bunch of index add-on namespaces, but overall it's fairly reasonable. Oh, actually, I'm about half. Oh no, that's all foreign keys. So the long story short, for GitLab.com, I think it won't be an issue, but for existing C installations, it might take quite some time to run this migration. Okay, but so then what we'll do is target 12.0. As part of 12.0, just remove all the EE migrations, making sure, of course, that whatever new schema changes are in my backport migration. This does mean that we have to make some sort of announcement about this, so people are aware that they can hopefully take this into account somehow. Let's see, of 3. I think for 12.0, we then have to take the simple approach, like, after the 7th, no more database migrations, at least in EE. Right, CE, no problem, but EE is a no. And if you want to do that, just add them in CE.
7th of May, right?
No, so if 12.0 is 22nd of June, that will be 7th of June.
Of June, okay.
Right.
We can add a hard danger bot fail for that too. Anything new in EE/TV.
Right. And I was ahead of time. Agree. After, oops, June. Yeah, one issue with Danger is that it doesn't run for either existing merge requests or forks. So
we can abort it to master, right?
of course we can do master. The problem, I think, if we wait for it to be merged to master, we'll get these cryptic errors for some spec fields because some column isn't there. And then we have to figure out, okay, why? What I'm thinking of at the moment is that we would announce this on team call, backend call, whatever. And then maybe we write a script that just goes through all the merge requests on E, check if they add migrations, then check, hey, and then just add a note like, hey, after June 7th, this is no longer possible, so please. Yeah, that's a good question. What do we ask people to do?
Do it before or forever hold your peace, right?
Well, so the issue is until this is merged, we can't actually tell people like, hey, add the migration in CE because the stuff isn't there.
Unless it's like adding a brand new column.
Yeah, and so what you would have to do is something like, hey, add the migration in CE, but make sure that if you modify something, check if the column is there, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, though, in that case, yeah, that would probably be the approach. The alternative is that we simply ask, hey, if this is not merged by June 7th, you have to rebase. You as the author basically have to solve the problem. Of course, you can ask for help, but
I mean, we'll have to do something. Like, it's not going to be seamless transition. Like, we need to like have complexity somewhere. So I'm fine with being a bit annoying and like blocking things for a couple of days while this is being done. So.
So what I'll do is also check. Let me write this down. Check how many EE merge requests there are that add EE specific migrations. All right, if there's like 3 merge requests, then it's not a big deal. But if it's like 200 created in the last week, then we might need to make the announcement earlier. Just so people can sort of take into account, like, oh, hey, there's going to be this point in time where we close the door, basically. If we announce this, what would be the best place? The backend call, the team call? I've always felt with the backend call that not everybody might read it, especially non-backend engineers.
It's gonna be all of the above plus more. So every individual team call will have to be like this. Will have to be added.
Right.
What I can do is, if you like create a general snippet and with enough information, I can go to each manager and tell them this is your responsibility to share with the team. So it's going to be team call, it's going to be general development, backend, front end, and every individual team call. Like we can also do engineering mailing list as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah, okay, so then we just do it everywhere. Yeah, so June 7th would be the time. That should be more than reasonable. So we announce it everywhere. We have to check merge requests. I think what we could do as a sort of soft, deadline, whatever you like to call it, is if there's not too many EE merge requests with EE migrations by GitLab employees, we could ask those already, like, hey, please include this already in CE with the appropriate checks, and please, ask us for help if you need to, just to sort of start, reducing the amount of stuff that might come in already, instead of having to go through 30 merge requests in the week of the 7th and trying to figure out, okay, how can we backport those? And I think that shouldn't be too annoying, because for the most case, that's just something like, instead of migrate this column, it's like migrate this column if it exists. That's basically like 1 or 2 lines extra. That way, yeah, we don't have to play catch up in that week. Let's see. Okay, so there was one issue where Sean and such were discussing this. So I probably should then update that one with this plan, so they don't go through all of that. And then we come in and we just remove everything. I can't find it, but I'll find out later. Let me add that to update. Although I think that might have been talking about just migrations in general, not specific to EE, but we'll see. Okay, so I think that will be the plan then, 12.0. We just get rid of all the migrations, saves us 330 files. Geo, have not looked at it yet, no idea, but probably will be a similar, oh, Geo is easier, I think.
Geo is separate, like everything is
For
separate for
schema.
Geo, right?
Yeah, it is a separate database, so I think in that case we can just move the files and done. And since we've actually have the migrations since the very beginning, we can just run those. Right? The whole problem here is that we missed the history from like 2012 until early 2014. Okay, yeah.
And
So
test plan, please. Don't
Yes.
forget that.
no, I have it written down here. So my notebook. Otherwise, it goes in one ear and end the call and it's gone.
That's why we record the call.
It's like, oh, damn it, I can't say I didn't do something. Or, no, it's on YouTube. All right. Yeah, so that's, I think, all for me. I have enough to continue basically figure out how to do this. Yeah. So that's it for me.
Perfect. Thanks, Yurik.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for joining and have a nice day. Stop cloud recording.